Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here. Welcome back to live stream the 5th. It's getting harder and harder to come up with quote-unquote witty titles for these things. So tonight we will be going for a couple of hours. I'm going to be working on some, unsurprisingly, hyperhelp related topics. I'm in a push to try to get to, I'm not sure if I actually ever really mentioned this before, a first quote-unquote release. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be a version 1 or anything, but the idea of the package is that it would be a dependency that other packages could depend on in order to provide their help. And along with HyperHelp, we also have the help authoring tools for editing help, and Snappy, which is bundling all of the Sublime Text API documentation and relies on HyperHelp to actually display that. And currently it's set up to be a regular package because that just makes development that much easier. But it ultimately needs to be a dependency. And in particular, it needs to be a dependency that works even if it's not installed inside the packages folder. Now, if you're new to Sublime Text package development, you may not realize that what package control does when it installs a dependency is it actually installs it into the Sublime Text packages folder. That's why you'll see packages in there with lowercase names like MD pop-ups or Python Jinja 2 or things of that particular ilk. Those are actually dependencies, and because packages in Sublime are technically just like packages in Python, that is how it works. There's a little bit of glue code behind the scenes to make sure that Sublime doesn't load the Python code and your package can. Once HyperHelp is in that state, it's going to be harder to develop because it's harder to get dependencies to reload themselves as opposed to packages. So I'd like to get as much of that core work done as possible and get things into a really good state before that part happens. And that's what we're going to be working on here through probably the entire month of November, I should say. This is the first of the November live streams. We'll be going on Sundays and Wednesdays going forward. So the next one's just going to be in a couple of days. We're going to fall back, but the time will still be 8 p.m. PST on the west coast of Canada. And for the foreseeable future, this is the sort of thing that we'll be working on. So why don't we go ahead and jump right on in? Now, before we get rolling, of course, let's get that business out of the way that we always have to mention. This channel, my personal channel, the Terrence Martin channel, has all of my Sublime Text live streams and archives. If you're interested in this sort of thing, you can subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon if you want Sublime, or if you want to know when more Sublime live streams are happening, blah, blah, blah. We all know how YouTube works. Remember to like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions on anything I'm doing, why I'm doing something, why I didn't do something, why I never notice a horrible bug until after I've made it and spent 20 minutes looking at it, you can throw those in the comment section below the video, or hit me on Twitter at OdatNurd, or as my desktop points out, you can also go to OdatNurd.net for that sort of thing. Now, if long videos like this aren't your bag, or you just cannot get enough of me talking about Sublime Text and working on things, you can head over to my other channel, the OdatNurd channel, where the videos are more curated, pre-recorded, and to some degree edited, so they're not nearly as long. They're only a quarter as long as these ridiculously long ones, and hopefully they have fewer mistakes in them. And you can subscribe to that channel. You can subscribe to both. If you have any questions about what's in those videos, same thing. Drop questions in the comments, Twitter. Go to OdatNurd.net, see other ways to contact me. The internet world is your oyster. Now, I did a little bit more work on the linter action that we were working on last week. As we can see here, I've cleaned it up a little bit. I decided, besides the fact that the code didn't look particularly nice, it didn't make a lot of sense to have one class first doing valid validation of links and then doing validations of anchors. In the original incarnation, when it was just, basically this many lines to do both of those, just to do simple validations, that made perfect sense. Now it's doing a lot more stuff. And as we can see here, there are more ways for more linting action, I should say, for things to go wrong. So this one is for linting links, and we will get lint errors if a link is broken. That is, if you try to use colons in order to point it at a different topic or to specify text, but you didn't put enough of them in there. It will warn you with an error if your link is referencing a topic in a non-existent package, which, as we know, will appear in the hover pop-up as uh, uh, that same similar error message. It also, you get the warning if the link references an anchor that is unknown, and you also get a warning if you try to create a link that opens a package file and that package file doesn't exist. That may have been something that I was doing last time. I can't remember. I actually had a little bit of a problem with my implementation of that, which of course I discovered right at the end of the live stream. And when it comes to linting anchors, we have similar things to what we had before, but hopefully the code is a little cleaner. If it starts with an underscore, then it's either going to warn you that it's reserved for internal use or do nothing if it's in the list of known approved. You can use these reserved anchors. And we also get a warning if the anchor was not found in the index, because nothing's going to be able to jump to that place because it's not in the index. And this is one that was added, and I think I may have actually added that in the stream. I would imagine I've done so much work over here, but it warns you if you define a link in a file when it's actually in the index in another location. So for example, if I was to actually edit the help file here and created an anchor of build, and I was to press the right sequence of keys to lint that, I get a error that the build is defined in another file. The build topic is defined in index.txt when this is test.txt. So that's some good lint actions, as far as I'm concerned. I'm still whiffle waffling on whether or not these things should be errors or should be something else. For example, here I'm saying it is definitely an error if your link is malformed. That's never going to work. And I've also taken the tack of saying that it's an error if you try to create a link to a topic in a package that you personally don't have installed, because as the author of the help, you should really be doing this sort of testing. That's not considered an error when someone follows the link in their file, of course. That just sort of works as expected. You'll get an error message that says that the topic isn't known. The link will be underlined as such. That's less of a situation because it's entirely possible that someone might want to link to help that for a package you don't have installed. That's fine. That's nothing that the user should be complained about. So I have a few other ideas for things for lint actions that I'd like to add here, some of which may actually already be done looking at things. For example, this one here, which missing help source linter, which only applies when you're linting the index. That is, if I lint in this file here, it only lints this file. If I lint in the index for a package, it lints all of the files that are referenced in the package and and in this index, and it also does this action here. So what this is doing is grabbing all of the help files in the document root for this help package, and then it gives you a warning if there's a file in that folder but it's not in the index, and you theoretically get warned if the help file is in the index but it's not listed in the actual package. Both of those things both seem like things that you probably want to know about. So let's go ahead and fire up our 2-hour timer and see what we can make of this. Now, I'm assuming unless things go horribly awry, this isn't going to take 2 hours. And in that case, there are some other authoring things that it would be nice to add. And we can also investigate something that I was thinking about doing in the last stream, but we'll talk about that when we get to that point. So let's go ahead and fire up the timer and commence to actioning. Now, I want to verify I got here files in the index that aren't in the table of contents. Help file title doesn't match the index. Files in the index but not on disk, and topics in the index but not in a file. So I think files in the index but not on disk is already one that works. I think this is handling that. So in order to verify that, let's go ahead and close a bunch of stuff that is not strictly necessary and edit the index for this and bring it down here. We'll close the one for Snappy for the time being. Now, if I was to do this and say missing.text, no, missing.text, no, oh, I broke it. Autocompletion sometimes makes me sad. The file that's missing. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Keep that over here on this desktop so I can keep an eye on the console. And essentially, I do this because there's no way to pop the console out. And even if I did, there was a way to do that, I'd still put it on the other monitor anyway. So just create a window, scroll it all the way up. Yeah, the splitter bar. You get this tiny little area at the top, but mostly you get a lot of console that you can do something with. Everything that's output to the console gets sent to both of them at the same time. So even though that was empty now, it won't be later. You have that little file area on the top. You got a couple of notes you want to keep to remind yourself of what you're working on. That's a great place to throw them. And I'm mentioning all of that because you may hear me from time to time making comments about things being mad or knowing about error locations without actually opening the console. And the reason for that is I'm doing that over on that other monitor. Now, in the normal course of affairs, I would go ahead and make that window always on top, but that's not strictly necessary here because I don't have anything else really happening on the other monitor because that's where the live stream control panel is currently stashed. But enough of that boring action. I'm going to reload that help index and run a lint. The help file missing.txt is in the index, but it's not in packages user help. And I think if I follow that, it just takes me to line 1, column 1 of the index because one of the to-do items on the extensive list of to-do items is a custom syntax for the index that allows us to more easily find things. Now, in the particular case of this file being in the index but not in the location, I guess if it was going to pop in here, it would have to find the appropriate entry, so it would have to know this. I could probably parse to find that information, but it seems cooler to use the syntax anyway. That's down the line. So that aspect is working. So I'm going to delete that, reload that index again, and now when I lint it, it should work. And I think if I was to go to here and save as missing.txt like so, now if I was to lint, well, if I lint in this file, it's not going to say anything, I don't think. Let's find out. Let's lint it. I'm going to close the lint panel to make sure I know. Yeah, see, nothing happens there because this file isn't considered to be a part of the package. I'm going to, well, I probably should have did that the other way, shouldn't I have? Oh, that's an unfortunate turn of events. Let's edit test. Okay, now just to point that out, if I lint here and pick the appropriate thing. Now it's doing linting. Okay. And okay, that has to be the first line. Let's quit it and reopen it. There we go. Now it might try to lint it because it's got the appropriate syntax. It'll lint it, but it doesn't find any problems. But if I did it in the index, the help file missing.txt is in there, but it's missing from the index. Okay, so that is perfect. Topics in, no, that is files in the index, but not on disk. That was something in the to-do list that I could not remember if that 100% works. I should also point out that all of this linting code was written before the advent of the ability of a single Sublime package to contain more than one help system. So I wanted to test that anyway because it would have worked in the past. I wanted to make sure that it still works now. As a matter of fact, just for the purposes of that, I'm going to edit the help file index, let's say, and save as missing in Snappy. As I like to say before something goes horribly wrong, watch this. I'm in missing.txt. I need to actually edit the index for this, and when I lint, the help file missing is in file packages snappy API, but missing from the index. That is 100% perfect. That's how that is supposed to work. The document root is relative to the package. Previously, it did not used to be because there could only be one help package per package, but I didn't want to make 5 packages just for all the Sublime documentation. So we're going to close that. We're going to delete that one because we don't care. Go back to the file we were in, which is that one, which we're also going to delete. And there we go. Actually, I like the order better that way. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this down here. So the next thing that isn't a problem, and it should be, is the inverse of this. If I created an anchor called sample and lint this, I get a warning that says the anchor sample wasn't found in the help index, which is a warning to me that I've done something in the file, but I haven't gone to add it to the index. Now, of course, long-term future, the idea is that not only would this warn you about that, it would actually go ahead and cram that in the index for you. But there are bigger fish to fry in the world of displaying help than that. So we're not going to worry about that for the time being. But what we want is the opposite of this. If I come into the file test.txt, which is this one, and add a help topic, and the help topic was sample topic, save, reload. The idea is not when I lint the file, but when I lint the index, it should tell me that the index says the topic sample appears in the file, but it doesn't. And that would warn me of the opposite of the problem that I just pointed out, where I knew I was going to set up the index to have certain topics, but I never actually got around to writing the help that goes in them. And this one is arguably worse because if a topic is in the index, the linter won't complain if you link to it. But when you try to follow the link, you'll get an error after it opens the file because it doesn't know where the anchor is, which is not a good user experience, I would imagine. Now the question becomes, should it do that when I lint this file, or when I lint the index, or both? So I guess I could assume if I ran the lint here while I'm editing this file, maybe I want to know that the index has entries that this thing doesn't know about. That seems like it might be an idea. So if that's the case, then, well, what would we call? Technically, it's an anchor linter, but I don't want to add more stuff to this because this is working by finding anchors in the file, and we need the flippity flop of that. So I'll do it up here. We'll call it index anchor linter, and it derives from linter base. And let's see, we're gonna have to lint in this view with this file name. And the other thing we need, I'm going to have to look up here because I cannot remember for the life of me what the thing is called. Results. I think that is going to be something I need to. Incidentally, this is the linter base class, which is what makes these things easier to write. And as you could probably presume, do that to make sure that it actually does what we expect. I write everything in an iterative fashion. I don't know if I've ever actually explained this before. There are a couple of schools of thought to how you might go about writing code. There are some people that just sit down and start writing, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, and there's absolutely no planning. That's fun. It's a cool exercise. It may look like I'm doing that, but I'm technically not. The flip side of that operation is to go the complete other way and sit down with a giant pad of graph paper, draw diagrams, chat with a bunch of people about everything that this could possibly do and how it could work, and perhaps even take it all the way down to some level of pseudocode for how things are supposed to work. And that's certainly how it was portrayed to me in college. Never really able to get behind that. I'm somewhere in the middle of those two. I'm just sitting down and coding, but I didn't do it without a plan. I didn't sit down and formalize anything in writing, but in my head, I've thought, okay, well, I'm going to want to do something that's linting. So how am I going to go about linting things? Well, one thing I could do is create an external process. I don't want to create an external process because everything in the help system is driven by using the syntax to be able to match elements in the file. And Sublime already knows how to do that. And I really don't think that a person editing help needs to go out of their way to install Python just to run an external Python program to lint their help, because that's overkill for the simplicity of the operation we're going on here. I don't like to force people to install things that they don't necessarily want or need to have installed just to run something that I wrote. So, and I also I'm too lazy to do that because I've already written the syntax and John has already written how to parse things with the syntax. Let's leverage that. So I discounted that out of hand. And then from there, I decided, well, I don't want to open those files myself. I'm going to have to open them in Sublime. In that case, if there, I could create a buffer panel in the panel list here and load the files into that to apply the syntax so that they're not visible and just do what I would normally do if the file was open. But what if there's actually a file already open, like this one here? I don't need to open it and load it into the file. It's already open and loaded. So I'll just lint those ones. And that gives me the added benefit of not having to force a save on a file because it's just examining the content of the file as it currently appears. Let's go with that. And then I wrote some stuff and verified that my idea was going to work. And then I just slowly iterated on it over time. And that's usually how I work on things. So here, the idea is, and we'll say lint one or more source help files trying to identify anchors that appear in the index for that file, but which don't appear in the file itself. Okay, now how would I actually pull this off? Well, I know how to do that in pseudocode. I should also point out that I've been doing this a long time, so at some level, theoretically in a hand wavy way, I kind of have the experience necessary to sort of pull stuff out of my butt because there are various problems that I've solved a lot of times before in the past. So I'm probably, slightly better at, when certain problems pop up, I already have in my head the knowledge of several times that I've solved similar problems and all the things I tried that didn't work and things I tried that did work and which one of those works better here. And that's really why when people say I want to be a Sublime package developer, but it seems so hard, there's not a lot of documentation on it. And my answer is, well, have you just sat down and wrote 20 plugins for no reason, re-implementing things people have already done just to see how it works? Because there are a lot of ways to do a lot of things, and some of them are better than others qualitatively based on experience and how you want things to work. Theoretically, I say if something works, then it works, and it's probably a good solution if it's not too brittle. You got to get the experience, is what I'm saying. So don't be afraid to play around. Now, that is going to give me the information for the index, and I think there's a help topics that is a part of that. And let's see, help data, package, help topics. Yes, it's a dictionary, and the keys in the dictionary is the help topic, and the values are the dictionaries that say what the topic is, what the caption is, what file it's supposed to be in. So that's something I'm going to need to know so that I can determine all the topics that appear in this file as far as the index are concerned. Other information I might require is the list of help files. Now I could go a couple of ways with this. The actual help topics is just literally every help topic in one big dictionary. So when you look up the topic build, the answer that you get tells you exactly what the topic. It'll have a key that says that the topic is build. It'll say that the caption is command::build, and it'll say that it's in the file index.txt, if I had to guess based on how I wrote the help system. The information in the index has the same information. It doesn't have a file in it because that's up here. So the index loader flattens it out, if you will. So one thing I could do is try to load the index and parse it as a JSON thing, but that seems like work because I've already done that and verified that it actually works. There's no way necessarily to get topics by file because nothing really cares about that. So let's say I want to find all of the help topics and only pull out the topics that are for the current file. So what we're going to do to start is comment out that and print index anchor linting. And then we're going to run up here a little bit to some lines that I scrolled past a minute ago. I scrolled past them too far. There's the one we want. We want to add one here. And we want that one, right? Yeah. this finds all of the lints for the current target. So this one always happens no matter what. This one's only added when there's a package. So if I wanted, I could move this down to there and indent it, and then this lint will only happen if you're linting the index, but I think it should happen in both locations. And the plugin still reloads, so if I run the lint, we should see index anchor linting twice. And as a matter of fact, just for our own edification, we can also add file name just so that we can see it happening. All right. You can't lint that file, that won't work. But that one will, and now we can see it linting both of those files. And it's important. This provides, clearly the lint panel has access to the fully qualified file name because it's matched here. Or sorry, the base directory is the actual document. In any case, that's the file that's going to appear in the topic dictionary. It's the same as that one, which is why that works that way. So I think I could say not that, but I think I could say topics is what? Topic for something in self.packageinfo.help topics.items. Values. Topic for topic in self package info help topics. If topic file is equal to file name. That seems to work. And let's go ahead and let's do that though. Well, you know what? Let's move those both down. It's obviously very important that the debug code look nice before we go ahead and debug things. Okay, package still loads, lint, and there we go. So when it's linting in text.text, we can see it found just the two topics that are defined in that file, and those are all the topics that appear in the other file, which just contains a list of all of the Sublime text commands that I cribbed from the unofficial documentation. So that does what we want. And now we have a list of all of the topics that appear in this file as far as the index is concerned. And as a matter of fact, I could even shortcut this and do that. And in that case, not that one, that one, and that one, and make it T. So T topic for T in self package info help topic values if T value is file name. And the point of that is to end up with just the names. And as a matter of fact, I think what I actually want to do is that, because I think that should get me a set. I don't actually know. Let's find out. I would imagine it has to be if it doesn't have keys and values, right? But you can never be too careful. There we go. So this is index topics are all of those topics. And then we say file topics is a set And then we go do some copy paste action. Like so. Oop, wrong place. Find all of the anchors, grab that, and then, okay, that can't ever return. Now that can't ever return a none for a topic. Worst case scenario, it returns the text of the body. What we need to be careful of here is, I mean, this is one of those cases where maybe this is something that needs to happen in help anchor linter now that I'm getting to this point. It didn't seem like that to begin with. That part doesn't need to be there. Because we need to create a set that contains all of the topics that are considered valid, if you will. Because we have a list of all of the topics in the index. We want to pull out all of the topics from this that are valid, didn't already have an error reported for them. Is that something we care about here? Let's think about this. If the anchor starts with an underscore, it's never going to be in the index. So this would return, and that's good. If the information in the index is none, we don't need to report that it's not in the index because it's obviously not in the index. And if this happened, then this appears in the index but in a different file, so we don't want to handle that one either. So if this was to return none, none, and the topic didn't start with underscore, then more work has to happen there. So do we want to have to look things up in the index just to know? For our purposes here, let's say yes. We can always roll this in later. So not only would we parse that, we would also look up that. So what would we say here? We would say if topic starts with underscore or index info is none, or, and this is going to go on multiple lines, so this is already something that is the sad maker, or this. Yeah, we'll just, yeah. If any of that, then continue. We'll indent that one more. Print %s looks like a valid topic in this file. And we'll actually remember to do that. And load and lint. Boom! Okay, now for the purposes of this, let's go ahead and start doing it this way so we see less information. Theoretically. Oh, I guess I should probably do that so we can tell. No valid anchors in this. Well, that seems like a plan. So let's say invalid and no, not a valid. Let's do it that way. And is valid, like so. Now, if I do that, neither of them appear because index info is none. So there's a problem. I've confused myself with this whole entire test. Oh, the topic is sample. So let's go ahead and change that one to sample. Anchor not a valid was not found in the help index, and sample looks like a valid topic in this file. Okay, so that is doing what we want. It's only telling us things for anchors that we haven't already had a problem with. Now for our purposes, we need to remove that one because we need to find, we need this to tell us the problem basically. And we would say file topics dot, I don't know, how do you add things to a set? Does anybody remember? I know I don't. Let's do that. Seems to load. All right, theoretically, maybe that worked. Let's do that. Yay! I accidentally remembered how to work a set. Okay. Now we have a set of all of the topics that are in the index, and we have a list of all the fonts that are in there. So we can say for topic in index topics minus file topics self.add view. Is it a warning or an error? Let's say it's a warning. For file name at this location, the message is anchor %s appears in the, oh wait, this is for topics that appear in the index but not in the file, so we can't use this version of this. There's a version of it specifically for the index. Add index, there we go. This one. Whoops. What's M type in this? Okay. We'll copy that and jump on down. More. Oh, I see. I see what I did there. It's this. Self add index. It's a warning. Man, I cannot type. And then we can say anchor appears in the index for in the index but not in %s, and then say topic and file name. Seems to have loaded. Anchor sample appears in the index but not in test.txt, and anchor test.txt appears in the index but not in test.txt. Ooh! Okay, that reloaded. Lint. Can you even do that? I'm not sure. Maybe I want to do that. Maybe I didn't actually reload that, and that's why that happened. Okay, we'll have to print that. Essentially, the problem here is in the index, there's always an implicit topic with the topic ID, the name of the file, and the caption being the title of the file. specifically so that when you use the API function to go to a topic, you can just specify the name of a file like index.txt or test.txt, and the file will be loaded and focus that name up in the top. So the index knows that that exists, but in the source version of the file, that doesn't exist because it gets generated into the file when the file is loaded. So let's do, for our own edification, pprint file topics and pprint index topics. And lint, I see. This is an iterable. So I guess that all things being equal, probably wanted to do this then, I guess. Oops. That'll probably do more what I want. There we go. See in the console there, that's the starting set for topics in the file, which is always going to contain the name of the file. Those are the ones in the index. The only one that's left out of those two, if you subtract one from the other, is samples. So we get an warning in the index that the anchor sample appears in the index, but not in test.txt, which is what we want to have happened. So we can remove those lines because we don't care. Similarly, this doesn't need to be here. This is what the linter calls to get the results. The default action is to just return the list of results that were built up over time, which is what these self.add calls are doing. They're adding things to the results. I originally anticipated that perhaps I might need to do extra work at in the results call. And as a matter of fact, if this and this were both instance variables, or if that was an instance variable and I pulled this from in this results, then it would actually, we could actually perform this set intersection type E operation and this at the point where we're returning results. But that's not actually something that we need to do here, so we can go ahead and take that out now, right? And that's still going to do what we want. I can still lint and see that. And to verify, if I add sample to the file, we don't see that as a warning anymore. So that's good. But what we do want to do, Sublime API. No, it's just API hyperhelp. This is the help index for Snappy's API documentation. What happens if I lint this? Hey, go me. Probably that even does what I want. So that is topics in the index, but not in the file, which is 100% what we want. Now, does this actually need to be this class that is sort of, but not quite the same as this? Because all of this part is the same as this part, except for this add at the top. And I know to do certain things in certain cases. So let's say this. If I pull those two lines and add them here, like so, but that one can go like that. We want to add this to file topics only in certain cases, right? So if the severity is not none, then there was actually something wrong. So here will be in the else, And that's what we want to add, but we don't want to do it every time because this also returns none none if the topic starts with an underscore, and those are topics that are never going to be in the index. So I suppose I could say if, no, I'm going to do it this way for now. If the topic, if not, topic dot starts with underscore, do that. Now, if this was else if, I assume that should work. If severity is not none, then do that. Otherwise, severity is none. So it can do else if, yeah. Let's say that, but we'll fix the indent so that it's not mad. Now, just for our own notification, that's not going to do anything exciting, but if I run the lint and type it correctly, it still is doing that code and that part works, so that's good. And now I can grab this part and pull it down like so. But we'll delete that out and reload, and it should still work. But if I delete it entirely, we should get the error twice because that other linter is doing it and this one is doing it. So it still works, but now we don't need to worry about this. So this line can go away. And this whole class can go away. And we're left with a very simple diff that adds extra, whoops, that's the wrong file. No, whoops, yeah, let's still verify that. That's what we want to do, yeah. I say we're left with a simple diff that does what we want. And this is part of that whole iterative thing that I mentioned before. Sometimes when I'm working on something that even if it was something to do with the help system, I would go off and develop it on its own, make sure that I know how it's working and that it's doing what I want, and then roll it in because this whole code base is fairly complicated. It's a lot simpler. That's why if you watched previous live streams, you will have seen when I wrote the parse anchor body and parse link body things, I did them in a separate Python script that had absolutely nothing to do with Sublime at all to make sure those worked, and then I could just pull them in and knew that everything was good to go. So that is topics in the index, but not in the file. So let's go ahead and commit that. And I'm going to need a branch for this, say. Got a lot, oh yeah. Those are going to be there for a while. We're not going to worry about those. Whoops. Create branch. What will we call our mystical new branch? Linter extensions, let's say. And boy, is it the hallmark of well-designed code that just the addition of a few lines makes things work in a whole new way and adds a whole new level of functionality? Maybe. Probably this is just something that's really simple to do. So let's go ahead and stage that and say include the ability to find missing indexed topics in an inverse of the existing linter logic for telling you that an anchor in a help file doesn't appear in the index. This implements a new lint action, a new extension to anchor linting, because it's not new, that does the linting a word. Anchor lint code. I kind of have a spelling error even in my commit message. In an inverse of the existing linter logic for telling you that an anchor in a help file doesn't appear in the index, this implements a new extension to the anchor lint code that warns you if an anchor appears in the index but doesn't appear in the appropriate file. And an inverse thing of that as well is if the file index.txt had the thing sample. That is to say, if I did edit on index and added sample here, when I lint this file, now I get the warning that the topic sample is defined in another file. And if I did it here in the index, I get an error in index because the topic sample is defined in another file, and I get an error or a warning in test.txt that says, or in the index, I should say, that says the sample appears in the index but not in test.txt. And you could look up those two things and go, oh, I totally did something terrible there. Which is what we want to have happen. Boy, I can't type, can I? Stop undoing things. Now, let's see. Files in the index, not in the table of contents. I'm not entirely sure what my logic for that was. Oops. Table of contents is what you get when you use the question mark key or use the appropriate commands. I don't think this package actually has a table of contents. If we looked in the help files, yeah, this has nothing. But again, if I was to do API hyperhelp to see the help for Snappy, this help contents key here specifies a hierarchical list of topics that appear in the table of contents. So that's how we get the top level index, then the general information. So that brings us to this file. General information is a hierarchy that takes us to what we can see right there. Example plugins, the life cycle, threading, units and coordinates, and types. Similarly, core components has the Sublime module, the sheet, view, selection, blah, blah, blah class, which we can see there. And the plugin module has event listener, view event, application, blah, blah, which is that. So the table of contents for this is laid out very similar to that in a hierarchy. So that lint action, I guess, would warn you if you added something to this table of contents for a file that doesn't actually exist in the package. I'm going to skip that for right now because at some level, when you load the help index, when it is parsing the help contents file there and expanding it out, it rejects some entries that are invalid. So in theory, it might be able to throw that away. Plus the table of contents code might be changing because it does display in this, which is nice. Here in this package, in my user folder, I don't have a table of contents specifically, so I just end up with a list of every topic, which is useful for this particular package, but not useful in general. If there was, like the inverse to that is the symbol index, which does the same thing no matter what. So here in Snappy, this is just a list of every topic in the help file. And here are all the classes, which you can see appear twice because there's a topic. The edit.txt file has the same caption as the this section here. Um, for the purposes of Snappy and other packages of its ilk, it would actually be cool if this generated a file that had links to the items so that you could see a hierarchical table of contents as in a book and then follow the links if you were so interested in doing so. As an either or option, that's one of the reasons why anchors that start with underscore are reserved for system use. But that's way down the line. So we're going to skip out on that. And what was the last one? The help file title matches the index. Now, that is an interesting. I'm not entirely sure how well that would work. So I could say from hyperhelp.core import help index list and help package info is help index list for the package Sublime API, which is the snappy documentation. Oh, sorry, it's a function. And package info.help files. Info. So this is a dictionary where the is it application and the title and oh, I see. The name of the file, the name of the title of the file. Now here in the index, that information is gathered from the structure of this. The one whole help file is a list. The very first item in the list is the title of the file, which is used here, and it's inferred as the caption for that file's topic, which again is like this. If I did press the right key. There's a topic named edit whose caption is sublime.edit class, which we could see if we went over here and found edit and hovered. The caption is sublime.edit class. And following that link takes you there. The topic edit.text also has that because that's what it appears as down here in the file. If I scrolled way down at some level, the view is a really big thing. There's selection, region, phantom, edit. We see that there. If you follow that one, it focuses the anchor up there and not the class down there. But if I edit the help file edit, this key here says title equals this, and that is the one that's used to generate this. That's sort of a convenience. The title and the date being there is sort of a mimic of how you can see it here in the file without having to go find it in the index. Theoretically, there's nothing wrong with the title of the file being different here than it is in the index. So maybe this is an example of a lint rule that could be selectively turned off if a person cared. But it's easy enough to check because we can go through there and figure things out. I mean, maybe we can. Let's find out. Lint the help index to determine if the list of help files listed in the index matches the list of help files that exist for the package. Now that is just finding the files and finding that. So right in its init, you notice it's still doing linter base, right in its init, it finds all of the information that it cares about. And excuse me, then when the lint call is made, nothing happens. And when results happen, self.issues is returned, which is what the calls to add are adding thing to because they're appending to that list. And it's doing those calls in the init. So we could say, and again, maybe this ends up being part of something else. Mismatching title linter, and it's part of linter base. Now, I guess we'll type the comment first. Lint the help in lint all help files. Now, I'm not 100% sure what this will do, so let's not even do that, shall we? Let's just go ahead and define this and see if this is still going to get called for everything, no matter what. Print checking title for %s file name. And again, we're going to copy that to the point where get linters. For now, we're going to put it here and reload and lint in this big file. No, lint in this one. I accidentally folded that up and I didn't mean to. Okay. Lint in this one. The console says checking title for index.txt, checking title for test.txt. So do we want to, this isn't here, here's an example now. Do we want to do this only for that? Do we want to do that also when we're doing it up here? Because right now, just to show you, it actually said that it was checking the title, which means that mismatching title linter was being called. And if I lint in this file, it doesn't print anything there. Those are the ones from before. And if I was to lint again, we can see there's not printing anything. But if I moved this up and over to there, now when I do it in this file, we see nothing, really? Well, that is, I have to admit, not what I was expecting. Oh, there we go. Checking title for edit.txt. It did not reload things as much as I could have. It's one of those funny situations. Now, the reason why that happened is because linter.py has this. Saving the change causes Sublime to reload the plugin. But over here is the command that it's somewhere around here, perhaps up more. Oh wait, that's the commands for actual HyperHelp itself. There's actually a commands file in the authoring tools that import these functions and to do something. And just because this source file was did something, doesn't mean that the version that the other file is referring to was changed. So you gotta, reload everything. In which case, we could now also figure out that information as well. So is it worthwhile to have that happen when we're linting individual files as well as the index? Now here's the argument. If it's only for the index, then you only get warned about titles mismatching in the index when you're actually linting the index, which does make some sort of logical sense. On the flip side, maybe you always want to know if that's the case. Now, the linter is only ever going to lint files that are actually in the index, which is why missing title linter has to do stuff in its init method, and because if it gets called for to lint something, that file must obviously exist. That's not going to help anybody. So, well, yeah. How do we want to do that, I guess, is the thing. Let's say for our purposes, and this is always something that can change later, we do that. Now, just again to point out, I just reloaded the plugin, so if I do the lint up here, we can see it's still doing something. But if I reload the entire package, now it's not, only when I do it here. So let's leave it like that and say that's an aspect of checking the index, not an aspect of checking a particular file. This file could be anything. That makes logical sense to me. I can see the case for both ways. So this is going to get called for each file that's linted. And then we're going to check the title of it somehow and generate a warning. Now, again, let's think about this logically. When this is working on linting files, it's only going to lint files that appear here in the index. It's not going to lint files that don't appear in the index because they don't appear in the index, and it's not going to lint files that appear in the file that have well, it might try to lint something that doesn't have a file, but that's a whole other error handled by somewhere else. So what we can do is, do we even care about that? No, I'm going to say that we don't. So lint the help index to ensure that the title that is declared for files in the index matches the title in the source help file itself. Okay. And we know that's getting called once for every file. We don't need to keep track of anything. We just need to know what the index title for the file is. So we can say we're checking the title for. Now, if we print self.package info dot help files file name, when we perform the lint, the console gets mad because, well, that's not, oh, because it's a string. If that's actually even how that works, let's find out. Key error file name. Okay, well, let's just print that then, and then we'll see. It's an ordered dictionary. What's the magic of an ordered dictionary? Let's see. Supporting the usual dict methods. An ordered dict is a dict that remembers the order that keys were first inserted. Oh, okay. I think my issue, such as it is that this should be file name. How about that? There we go. Now my mouse is locked. Now the title for index.txt is user help index, and the title for test.txt is that. So we can say index title is, well, why type it out when we know that? Nah, we don't need that part anymore. So that's the title for this file that appears in the index. Now we need to do more magic here. And for that, we need to look for parse help header. Given the first line of a help file, check to see if it looks like a help source file, parse the header, and return the parsed values back. Okay. So to start with, let's copy that and drop it here for future reference. And parse help header. Oh, it's too long now. That's an unfortunate indeed. That one, oh, I guess it's not technically too long. Is 80 allowed? I don't know. I don't like to get things into that column, but yeah, let's just say that. Okay, now the next, oh, why does that not do anything now? I'm a little concerned. There we go. That GitGutter forgot that this was something that it knew how to do something with. Now let's see. Where's the place where this is actually called? Help file is the name of the file, and first line is this. Well, that's handy. Let's just gank both of those then, shall we? We don't need help file because we have that. So we have first line is not self.view, just view dot full line. Help file goes away. And then we call parse help header file name and first line. Now let's go ahead again and what does it return back? A header data, which is this. Does it ever return none? No, it always returns something, even if it's got the current date and no title provided. So we can say file title is equal to parse help header blah 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 dot title. That should work, I would imagine. In file name, and then we can say index. Oh, let's go ahead and add a colon there. Index title and file. And reload and lint and boom! Object has no attribute view, huh? Yeah, I removed one and not the other. That's embarrassing. I'm on record, I was recording myself. None type has no attribute title, huh? Did I not determine that this? Oh. Well, there, I solved my own problem. No, that should still work, I would have thought. Well, let's go ahead and print. Let's comment all of that out because the issue is print. Okay. Did not do what I wanted. There, percent %s, there, percent first line. And that really looks like it's extracting the header. Header is equal to that. There. Reload. And it says poop a couple of times. There are also some confusing new lines. So how does this not match? Is the billion-dollar question. You know, I was expecting to have weird problems, but that wasn't one of them. Huh. Maybe that's its own magic help. Well, let's do that for the time being. Otherwise, we can do that, and that, and that, and that. And again, I imagine that's not going to be any better off. File index.txt does not have a help header. File test.txt does not have a help header. We're going to print okay. Let's see if we can think excuse my cough. Let's see if we can think about this logically. If I lint, I see in the console the text. Oh, Sploople. Hey, I bet you this fixes it. In the realm of embarrassing bugs, that's way up there. Hey, look at that. Now it works. In file index, the index says that, and the file says user specific help. Hey, look, it's totally going to give us all kinds of issues. That's neat. Let's do this first. Now, if I do that, I think the magic of, I mean, the help file still works, but it doesn't have that header at the top. And by works, I mean you can't navigate to the topic edit.txt anymore when it opens the file. If you look down on the status line, it says it can't find the topic. So that's an issue, but otherwise it does still work. And if I was to lint that, we can see unable to find topic edit.txt, in file index, and in file text. Which file did I edit to make that happen? Oh, haha, I'm in the wrong thing. Whoops. Let's throw that away. That's not the one to be doing that in. This is the one to be doing that in. Now if I lint this file, we can see nothing happening. Um, that's intriguing. Oh, because I did it for the index. Right. There we go. File, user-specific help, file test.txt does not have a help header. That's its own thing. So we can say if header is none, return self.add. Now we could actually add this for the particular file if we were so inclined, even though we're linting the index. Let's test how that would work for us, how nice that is. And do we remember how this works? Nope. So we would add to this view, and say it's an error to do that, in file name at sublime.region0, so that the position is line 1, column 1, top of the file. And the message is help file %s does not have a help header, comma, file name. So that's one thing that can happen. We can remove that out. And now, if I lint this, an integer is required. It got type region. Oh, really? Oh, it's a position. It's a position. It's a position. It's even easier than I thought. There we go. I overthought that one a little bit. There we go. Error. File test.txt does not have a help header. But look, it totally took me there. And now I can fix it. Lint. Yay. So that's something. Now the other thing is that's the title from the index. That is that title. If index title is not equal to file title, then self.add view warning file name 0. And again, this is, even though it's linting it in the index, well, we'll just do that for now. Title for %s in file does not match the index. And now we're going to have to put it on its own line. So now, title for index.txt in the file doesn't match the index, and the title for test.txt in the file, title and file header for blah does not match the index. I think I like that better. So, oh, and it perhaps shouldn't be capitalized, and perhaps that one shouldn't be either. Now, there's sort of an endemic problem. Oh, actually, those ones are capitalized, so maybe they all should be. It's just some of them aren't. So let's go ahead and fix that now. That's capital, that's capital. And let's fix everything about this, because I was about to say there's an endemic problem where this is actually the topic something appears in the index but not in the file. And the topic, we don't need ID, is reserved for internal use. And this should say topic blah was not found in the help index. And this should say the topic blah is defined in another file. Now, originally these were just called anchors, and it wasn't until later that they started becoming actual topics, and they sort of use them interchangeably. But it's time to tweak that up and get things working the way we want. Now here, malformed link references a topic. Link, that has to be a capital L, references an unknown topic. Link references a non-existent package file. Help file is in the package but missing. Help file is in the index but not in. File does not have a help header. Title in file header for blop does not match the index. We can remove the prints as being useless. Reload everything. Mute the microphone and take a drink of water. Try desperately not to cough, because we may be coming down with some sort of illness due to walking in the rain so much. And lint the document, and now we can see the topic not a valid was not found in the help index. Title in file header for test.txt does not match the index, and the title in file header for index.txt does not match the index. Now it's putting them here so I can do that. There's no good way right now to provide a multi-line lint message. They're all pretty simplistic. So if I tried to display the two opposing titles, that would get in the way, if you will. So for now, I'm not going to do that. That's something that can be tabled for later. It's enough to know that they're not the same. If you actually cared, you could go and see what the difference is. And I want to edit the help index for this, which I may or may not have already had open, and lint it, because I'd like to know in Snappy, how often does this happen? And the answer is never. That's really good. Okay, now we're going to leave that file open and that file open and that file open. So that is files in the index matching titles. That is that one right there. All right. And let's go ahead and hop into, not that, to that. And let's see, we imported a new thing. I believe that's something that we wanted to do. We added a new linter to the package. That sounds like something we wanted to do. Various tweaks. I mean, if I had my druthers, I would totally do that as a separate commit, but we can only take lunacy so far, right? And that does not appear to have any debug logic in it, so let's stage that hunk, and the rest of this is key maps for things that don't matter. So include a linter for page title matching in index. This includes a simple linter that's only applied while linting in the help index. Which verifies that the page title as declared in the index is the same as the header that's stored directly in the source file, source help file and commit. Now, again, the ultimate idea here is that the linter needs to be a little better. It could be applying uh, gutter icons and regions, which it's not doing right now. What I'd really like to have is some sort of right click on a lint issue of certain varieties and have it automatically fix it. So if the title doesn't match the one in the index, you right click on that and it could say modify the index to match the file, modify the file to match the index, show you the two titles, do it for you. When items appear, when topics appear in the file but not in the index, there could be an option to add them. There's a myriad, infinite number of cool things that this thing could be doing. So that's why some of this works the way that it currently does. Now, there's one last thing that I want to check here. When I do display lint, creates the output panel. It applies hyperhelp linter.sublime syntax. So if I did hyperhelp linter, there's no settings for that. I'm going to do this just temporarily. And syntax specific. Let's see. We want line numbers to be false. I don't think we need to see necessarily line numbers in the lint. We're going to leave the gutter there because you might want to use folding to fold lint things for lint errors. We'll leave that the way it normally is. And we'll also do was that actually being applied? No, move that off there for a second and close that. No, it wasn't. So let's go ahead and bring that back temporarily. Why is a ruler being applied there? We'll do that. And I'm going to save and see what that does. There we go. We'll leave the fold indicators there. That seems like a good minimum set of options. Let's go ahead and remove that. Okay. So that just makes that panel look a little nicer, I think. I've been wanting to do that for a while. Let's fold that, fold that, fold that. Oh, right. Dang. Need to do something like this. Move from user hyperhelp linter sublime settings to snappy. No. Hyperhelp author. Does it count as a resource? The other settings are there, so let's say yes. Okay. Now I think I might need to restart to get it to find those particular settings. There we go. Okay. Sometimes it gets mad when it has a settings file that it knew about and you remove it away and then add it to another place. I'm not entirely surprised by that. So now the untracked file for that one, we're going to stage that and say include some base settings for the lint panel, just to keep things visually nice by default. Let's assume that, like me, most people aren't interested in seeing useless rulers in their lint panel or line numbers of dubious utility. Right on. Now we're going to check out branch, master, and merge branch linter extensions as a merge. And then delete the branch linter extensions and push to origin master. And we'll push it up to GitHub as well. Primarily, that's because I can't find bugs and fix them until after 20 seconds or 30 seconds after I've pushed them up, because now I can't amend any of those commits, and so that it doesn't look like I made a horrible blunder. It's part of the testing paradigm, don't you know? So we don't need that. We don't want that, and we don't need that. So that is all of the lint issues that I had for this evening, except for the one where linting files that appear in the index but not in the table of contents. And again, maybe I believe the logic to that was if you added something to the table of contents, you didn't add it to the file. I'm reasonably assured that that isn't going to 100% work the way we want. For something like the table of contents, which again, this doesn't have, the table of contents can contain topic dictionaries like this that have a topic and a caption to allow you to use a different caption in the table of contents than the one that natively applies to the topic. As such, you can just create a dictionary with only a topic in it, and it'll infer the caption from the actual index entry like this. And because that's a pain in the butt to do, you can also just include a string as the topic, and that it infers that it's a dictionary with that as the key for topic, and that the caption and blah blah blah. So in those particular cases, it's possible for the topic to reference somehow after this is expanded, a file that doesn't exist. So maybe it's a good idea to do something like that. On the whole, unless the topic was actually the name of a recognizable file, it's really hard to say if that's what was intended. And I'm not really applying any rules to what an anchor looks like per se as far as the content goes, except it can't start with an underscore, and currently I can't have white space in it. So I'm going to leave that one alone. We'll sit on that one a while and see what happens. So other things I had an idea for, and maybe I could just give that a peek in. This when I reload a help file, and if you look down in the status line, you can see it saying that it reloaded edit.txt. The position of the cursor, no matter where it is in the file, always ends up roughly there for mysterious-ish reasons that I think has something to do with the fact that the file is loaded and looks like this and is post-processed like that. So I think the cursor ends up being at the end of the header before some insertions happen. Anyway, the important takeaway is it's irritating when you're working on help and you're way down in and you're like, oh, did I word wrap that the way I wanted? Let's double check. And you hit the key to reload it. And now you got to scroll all the way back down there. So it would be nice if it tried to keep the same cursor location as it originally had before the reload happened. This is kind of tricky. But only in so much as just because the cursor is here, if I save that position, doesn't mean that if I put the cursor back to the position I started it at, that it will end up in that exact place. If the reason I was reloading is because I added an extra sentence at the beginning of this, then the cursor is not going to be in the same place. It's not going to be after the word return, but it still will be in the general locale of the file. So that seems like it's worthwhile. And the history mechanism already knows how to save the location and viewport in so that it can swap between them when we do that. So at some level, I already know how to do this. So we could swap over to hyperhelp type code. I have no idea where exactly that's stashed as far as this is concerned. To be perfectly honest, probably in here. Update help view. No, I guess it's probably in help.py, I guess. We need to store the first selection. There it is. We create a history data and then reapply the history data. So for my purposes, I'm going to pull that over there. That's when it's updating the history. Display the help file, reload the help file. Now this is the code that actually needs to be tweaked, I think. I mean, it's the authoring tools, HyperHelp Author, that knows how to do that. So actually, let's say, yeah, we would want to do that in the authoring tools and not here in the core reload command, because if we do it here, then anyone that calls reload help file will always have this happen, and maybe they don't want it to happen. So it's more utility to provide the ability to not do that here and let the person that does it take care of it if they want to do that. Now the question is, where is show help topic? Oops. I cannot display help file. Okay, I guess it's in the core. Help index list, reload the help index, load the help file, display the help file, reload the help file, look up a topic. These are some things that I added recently that didn't used to be here so that you can investigate whether or not a topic is a normal file, a URL, or something that opens a package file, and we can verify if the URL is valid, and we can verify if a file is valid. And if you watched the last live stream, you know that I had a problem where the linter was reporting every package file is broken. That's 100% because I had a brain fart and I was just saying, using sublime.find resources for the full name of a package file like packages/default/exec.py. And then if that list comes back empty, obviously that resource isn't found, right? Wrong, because find resources don't use paths, they just use the names of the file because Sublime goes out of its way to find the locations for all of the resources. If you find resources for preferences.sublime settings, it will find all of the Sublime settings files. That's why you can't use paths in the load settings and save settings type things. So I have to do a little bit of extra work here. We get the name of the file. We get just the name of the file off of the full package resource. So packages slash default slash exec.py just becomes exec.py. We find all of the instances of the exec.py resource and make sure that the version that we were linking to is actually in that list. Okay, update help history, update help view, navigate help history. I believe this, let's see, the history keeps the package and the file and the viewport position and a selection. So these are the lines that we want. And now we can jump back to here, theoretically, and find create help, no. Edit help, no. Create index, no. That's a long one because it's got templates in it. Edit the index, no. Reload help, that one. Get the settings, if it has the package and it has the file, return self.reload. File must have a name and be in the packages folder. Oh yeah, this is the one that's directly in the help view. So when you do this, those two settings are set, it calls that. Failing that, if the file appears to be in the packages path, then it does extra work. Now I believe the magic of that, and I don't know if this actually still works, is if I go back to this, that is test.txt, this is test.txt. If I push F5 here, that should reload. I think that's the theory. And as we can see, it does, and the cursor's like way over there now. That's so that as you're editing the file, help file, you can push F5 and preview your results. So in the normal case, only the actual help view has the settings that know what help package and file are being displayed, in which case it can use this view directly. Otherwise, it has to examine the file name, make sure that it's in the packages path, obtain the package from it, and use that to get the file, which may or may not actually work for things like Snappy. That's something that needs to be investigated. This is an example of previously there could only be help for one package per package, and now there can be more. So that might need work. But no matter what, it does this if reload help file blah. So what we want to do is say help view dot viewport position, and let's go ahead and snappy that up. It returns a vector. Viewport is equal to that. If we actually reloaded the help file, then we can say help view dot set viewport position with viewport and false. And we can snappy that, which we didn't need to because it was already visible. If we want to animate scrolling to that position, no, we just want to jump there. Now, theoretically, with just those changes, we'll reload everything. Now, we're going to have to, the cursor position is going to change, I think, because we're not saving it, right? So the cursor position is line 433 with line 422, 422 at the top. You know what? Let's go ahead and make the top 444 because that makes life mildly easier. So if line 444 is at the top and this works, then the cursor should jump to the top of the file, but line 444 should remain. Let's see what happens. Well, it reloaded the help file. 444 is still visible, and then when I push right, whoop, we jump way up there. So boom, 100%, that is doing what we want. We want to maintain the selection. You know what? You know what we're going to say? We're going to say that the caret equals help view dot cell 0 dot begin is what we're going to do. Now, that means that if there's a selection and we reload the file, the cursor will stay where it was, but it's not going to keep the text selected. And obviously we could keep that. We could try to maintain multiple selections if we so cared, but we are assuming that the contents of the file is going to change as a result of this operation. So why try to maintain this selection? It's almost certainly going to go wrong at some point and someone's going to get mad. So better make everybody mad all the time by having them have to regain selections. So now we can say help view. Well, actually do that first, I think. Yeah, help view dot cell dot clear. Remove all selections and help view dot cell dot add sublime dot region caret. Like so. And now if the cursor is there and I push reload, cursor's still there. Way down here, cursor's still there. And I'm seeing it in the console, but you can also see it appearing down here as well when I reload. So if I had if I had an actual selection, cursor just stays there. Cursor always jumps to the beginning. It doesn't jump to the B point. So I suppose we could do that. So the cursor at least remains in the correct position. So now it's to the left. And now it's at the end of the line. And if there was more than one, the first one on line 202 is the one that gets kept. That's actually pretty boss, I think. So let's go ahead and smurge that up and stage that change and say enhance the help file reload functionality. Adds a simple extension to the ability to reload the currently displayed help file by keeping the same relative viewport and initial caret cursor position over the reload. Right on, right on. So that is something for that. Now the timer has 12 minutes remaining, even though the live stream is only an hour and 59 minutes. And I do want to do 22 hours of live coding and not just 2 hours of live stream, to the detriment of people that are perhaps not as interested in seeing some of that stuff. Hopefully find this stuff helpful. And we can see these 3 lines are pretty easy to add if you want to keep this. That's why I'm saying reload help file doesn't do that. I mean, this could be enhanced to have a parameter. Maybe that'll happen in the future. Now, here's just something that I have been spitballing. We can see here that the scope for the anchor is text.hyperhelp.help because this is a help file. And it ends in meta.anchor because this is an anchor. And it has string.unquoted in the middle. which has absolutely nothing to do with anything except that string.unquoted is this sort of yellowy type color, and that's the color that I wanted to use for anchors, primarily just so that the different syntax elements had colors so that it's just not a big boring shoot of white text. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in the past, but I think I did. String.unquoted shouldn't be there. It should just be text hyper help help meta.anchor. In fact, there should probably be maybe more scopes in there that provide more information about this on the whole, but string.unquoted shouldn't be in there because it's not an unquoted string. But that leaves us with the problem of how does it actually syntax highlight that thing if it doesn't have a scope? Because the syntax is providing scopes to the text, and the color scheme uses rules that match scopes to know what color to apply. No rules apply, text appears white. The traditional solution to that particular problem is to create a color, modify your color scheme. And as a matter of fact, we'll find if I do view package file for user Monakai, like so, see, I have some rules in here that I made specifically for myself. And that's why the anchors, which we can see are string.unquoted and punctuation anchor begin, are a slightly different color. I don't know how well that comes across because they're yellow with an alpha, because this rule says that punctuation.anchor, it should be that color. Without that, they end up being, if I comment that out, you can see they jump up to be the same string.unquoted dark color. Similarly, this rule here, which is currently commented out, applies to, I think, that one up there. So that one should turn orange, which is just something that I was spitballing as a change last week. And I've made the things for code fences be more dim as well. So as a user, you want your help to be syntax highlighted at some level, and you also want it to be customizable by you. You don't want it to just be white. So you either need to, in this case, create a syntax that only uses scopes that are common scopes from the scope naming guidelines, so that color schemes that are complete target them, and then let the user enhance that as needed. And generally speaking, what you would do is have some compromise on the minimum of scopes that should be colored, but provide rich enough scopes that even if someone's color scheme doesn't match them, they could still customize them. And an example of that is this. This has a rich enough scope by knowing that it's in a help file, it's in a help header, it's an anchor. So you can distinguish this anchor as being in the help header as opposed to an anchor that's not in the header, to style that differently. Maybe you want that bold, maybe you want it italicized, maybe you want it an entirely different color like orange, like I have over there. That's the utility you have. And the scopes allow you to do that, but by default, the default is just make them all the same. So you get the best of both worlds there. But there's quite a few constructs, or at least some like anchors, for example, that don't really have necessarily scopes that apply that are common. They could be a tag, for example, because anchor tags in HTML, but then they'd be red. And what do you make a link? Well, I guess Markdown makes things blue. And then what color is the date? Probably isn't one. You see the problem there. There's some things are just not going to work out. And as package authors, there are a few things we can do. One is we could try to modify the user's color scheme, which is actually a little easier to do now that Sublime Color Scheme exists. We could just we could load this, say you as a user are using Monakai, so I'm going to create a Monakai to Sublime Color Scheme file in your user package and add my own scope rules to it to color things. which works if I was installing a package and it did that to this file and it wasn't smart enough to make sure that it was appending to this file. That would piss me off because it would be blowing away my own customizations. Similarly, I would be pissed off even if it was smart enough to add rules because I have this commented out on purpose. I might want to add it back later. And if something programmatically modifies this file, it's going to throw those comments away. So that is not something to do. We could create our own color scheme. This is the tech I'm pretty sure that Sublime Linter used to use in the past. And what it would do is if I'm using Monokai as a color scheme, then Sublime Linter, which needs to inject scopes into the color scheme to be able to color things in the linter panel as warnings or errors or whatnot, or at least it did. It needs to have scopes defined in the color scheme. So it would say you're using Monokai. It would grab that entire color scheme, create a new one named Monokai with SL in brackets, and then anytime you're linting anything, it forces the color scheme setting to change, which is invasive because it drops a lot of files into user package. They're probably not going to collide with anything, but it's still annoying. Now we are in a special position here with hyperhelp because it's going to be, when it's done, a dependency. And like I said at the beginning of this video, Sublime, or in Sublime package control, when it installs dependencies, it installs them in the packages folder. Pyt process, pigments, PyMarkdown, Pyt, PyYAML, Python Jinja, Python Markdown. These are all dependencies. Now, Sublime automatically loads plugins in the top level of a package, but only in the top level. And so we'll see if we go into Pyt, there's a folder called all, an inside folder called all, then there's another folder called Pyt, and then there's files. So in the packages folder, Sublime leaves this alone because there aren't any plugin files here. But this plugin, the dependency metadata file, provides information to Sublime so that it knows what version it's for and whatnot. And I can't remember offhand if this has the thing that I'm talking about. No, it doesn't. Okay. Dependencies have a load order, and we can see that if I go up one more and go to here, there's this package called package control loader. And if I look inside, we can see there are a bunch of Python files that are numbered. Now, packages are loaded in lexical order, and plugins inside packages are loaded in lexical order. So every time package control installs a dependency, it adds a file to this thing here, named after the name of the package that did it, with a number at the beginning that sets the load order, if you will. It puts them in this package. It's named Sublime 0 underscore package control loader. The 0 is to make sure that this is the first package that's loaded by Sublime when it starts loading user installed packages. All of these are loaded, and if I was to grab one of these, and I'm not, no, that won't work, will it? No. What happens when I double click one? Ooh, I'm going to skip that. That's probably going to be unhappy later. But as we can see here, it's got some code in it, and what it's actually doing is messing with the system path if you follow this through enough, like so, which is the thing that the Python interpreter uses to know where to look for things. The result of that is that any code that wants to load that dependency can try to import it like it would normally import something. And even though down here in the packages folder, MD pop-ups, there's actually a folder named SD3 MD pop-ups and things. This MD pop-ups right here is what's added to the system path. So when you say from MD pop-ups import ping, this is the file that gets loaded. Hyperhelp as a dependency could be installed this way. And that is okay, but there's an important thing to note here, and that is that although Sublime won't load plugin files unless they're in the top level of a package, other resources such as key maps, menus, settings, syntaxes, TM preferences files, absolutely anywhere in a package, if one of these files exists, it will be loaded. There's the 2-hour timer. Don't have to do any more coding. We're just going to describe what we're going to be doing in the upcoming the upcoming live stream on Sunday. So if we're going to be a package that has to contain these files, and as we see we do, we need to be able to open the index or the contents or navigate between things or navigate links, and we need to add ourselves to the menu so we can view the table of contents, go back to various files, browse for available help, and all of these things. It's important that we not have these just sitting like this in this file, because if hyperhelp, and as we can see even right here, hyperhelp is a package. It's actually a symlink to something else. That means that as a dependency, even if nothing imports any of the code in this, which would actually activate the help system, all of the resources still appear. And that would be bad. There would be menu entries for something that don't do anything. Now, as it transpires, there's this folder called lib as a sibling package. And inside that is a Python 3.3, because that's the current version of Python that ships with, that is embedded in Sublime, I should say. It doesn't ship with Sublime. Any folders that are in here are just inherently in the system path. So at some point in the future, package control is going to switch from installing dependencies in the packages folder to putting them in that lib folder. Once it does that, the resources are never going to be loaded, the syntax and whatnot, because they're not in the packages folder. So we sort of have, when we actually make this a dependency, a twofold problem. One, we need to make sure that our dependencies or our package resources are available when the dependency is installed, and we can't rely on them just automatically being found. And we might be installed in this folder where they will be found, but we don't want them to be found. And so what we're going to do when we get to that part, probably later in the month if things go well, is make hyperhelp bootstrap itself from this dependency. There'll be one line of code that anything that uses the dependency has to invoke in its plugin loaded that will kickstart the whole help process. And as a part of that, it's going to verify and create a hyperhelp.sublime package file in the installed packages folder that puts all of the resources in there and all of the commands, and leaves just the core API, like this file here, and all of this stuff will still be in the dependency and accessible to anybody who cares. And there will also be a second hyperhelp package. Now we'll have to rename this to hyperhelp core instead of hyperhelp, or there might be a collision on operating systems that have case insensitive file names. But that bootstrapping, to bring it all the way back to what I was talking about 10 minutes ago, gives us a unique opportunity, because we are copying our key maps and everything into our package. It is a absolutely perfect opportunity for us to create our own color scheme and stick it in that package. A custom color scheme, one that we create ourselves based on the colors in the user's existing color scheme, but which have scopes that we control. So we can add our own rule for what an anchor is and what a header anchor is and what the title of a document is and what the date is and what this is and everything that we want syntax highlighted. We can create our own scopes and our own color scheme that matches those scopes. And we have the power to examine and create our own colors based on the colors the user is currently using. And then when we open the help, we apply that color scheme to this help view. And now we get all the syntax highlighting we want with particularly good colors, which we're going to draw from the user's existing color scheme to try to make it fit in. That gives us all the colors we want without having to mess up the user's user package. If the user so desires, they can create an override the same way I did, but theirs would be named hyperhelp.sublime color scheme. And then they could tweak whatever rules they want in there to make this mauve or this black on white or anything that you want. And there are actually a couple of API functions that we can use for this. There is view.style, which returns a dictionary of the global style settings for a view, and there's style for scope. So what we can do is say something like this. If I say, well, I'm going to do it this way, import from pprint, import pprint, because I always like to type more so I can type less. If I pprint view.style and then add a T, so it's actually style and not style, we can see all kinds of settings in here. The accent color, the active guide color, the background color, the caret color. There are also these meta-ish scopes that are injected, a color that's a greenish color based on colors the user has added, inactive selection, highlight, line highlight, mini border, basically everything that would be in the global section of something plus more. We can grab that from some open view that's using the user's current color scheme and immediately get a global set of colors that matches what the color scheme the user is currently using is. Then we could say view.style for scope string.unquoted, for example, which is the scope that's currently applied to anchors. And now we can see that is not bold. It has this foreground color. It's not italic. There's no background, so it doesn't have an overridden background color. And these lines we don't care about. They tell us the file that this color scheme came from and the column and row inside that file where it was defined in case we care. So now, well, not only can we get global information, we can also inject our own rules like these using this information. So we can still have our anchors apply with this color without having to insert string.unquoted. And of course, the user's color scheme may change, but we always have to rebootstrap the package every time the dependency or one of the commands is updated because it's going to copy these resources from the place where they're not seen to the place where they will be seen. So we could create a new color scheme at that point, and we could even implement a command that allows the user to do that on command if they wanted to. So that is going to be what we work on in next week's color scheme or in next week's live stream on color schemes, I should say. That sounds like a long time, but remember, we are doing all through the month of November 2 live streams a week on Sundays and on Wednesdays. Today's is on Thursday because it's November 1st. So there's really only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days to go until we dive into the ins and outs of creating a color scheme on the fly based on an existing color scheme. If you'd like to see that when it's happening live and pop in and ask questions, you can subscribe to the channel and be notified when I'm going live. And matter of fact, shortly after this stream ends, I will be scheduling the next one. You can click a notification icon on that, if I remember correctly, to have YouTube remind you that the stream is happening. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel and presumably be warned not only when it's live, but when the um, archive of the thing drops. In the meantime, you can feel free to follow any of the links in the description to this channel or my other channel and view any of the other Sublime Text videos I have. Or formulate questions and drop them in the comments section on one of the videos, or send me a message on Twitter at OdatNurd. For now, on this late, rainy night in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, we're going to call it quits and say, have a sublime day.